Hey everybody, how's it going? Aaron Rift here from NoDQ.com to give you my thoughts on the WWE B-PPV events from Backlash 2005 through New Year's Revolution 2006. Make sure you check out my other pay-per-view review videos. Let's start off with Backlash, the Raw exclusive pay-per-view, which I felt was average at best. To me, the most memorable thing on this card was Hulk Hogan coming back for his so-called one more match, because that's what the fans chanted right before WrestleMania 21 at the Hall of Fame. You had Shawn Michaels ask Hogan to be his partner against the evil foreigners, Muhammad Hassan and Daivari. Hogan accepted, and this was a lot of fun. It was very typical for Hulk Hogan matches. You had Shawn Michaels taking the beating, Hogan getting the hot tag, the good guys win, Hogan and Michaels pose, but it does set up the eventual Hogan-Michaels showdown at SummerSlam. It's definitely worth watching. Batista defended the World Heavyweight title against Triple H, which I thought was a good match, about at the same level as their WrestleMania 21 encounter, but I really felt the third match was by far the best of the series, and I'll get to that in a few minutes here. You had the last man standing match, Edge versus Chris Benoit. Edge now a full-fledged heel with Lita in his corner. I felt that this was good, but not one of the best last man standing matches in WWE history. I think they just went overkill with the 10 counts where one guy gets knocked down, he gets up at 9, and then the other guy gets knocked down, gets up at 9. Just kept going on and on and on. Dragged out a bit too much in my opinion. Shelton Benjamin and Chris Jericho had a really solid opener, so I would recommend checking that out. Everything else was forgettable. Next up, we have Judgment Day, the SmackDown exclusive pay-per-view. The main event stole the show. John Cena defending the WWE title against JBL, the rematch from WrestleMania 21. This was a million times better than WrestleMania 21. This should have happened at WrestleMania 21. Just a crazy, intense brawl between these guys. And the fans were actually still behind John Cena. You did not have the Cena backlash up to this point. And this was awesome. This was a lot of fun to watch. Perhaps JBL's best pay-per-view match. It's definitely up there for the best JBL pay-per-view matches. Maybe his best match, period. Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero was a lot of fun. These guys always had very good matches against each other, and this was when the whole Eddie Guerrero heel turn started, and they were building up to the storyline with Rey Mysterio's son Dominic, so this was fun. Booker T versus Kurt Angle, good match, but the storyline leading up to it, not so great. You had Kurt Angle playing the role of a sexual predator. He said he wanted to have sex with Booker T's wife Sharmell, and he confronted her backstage and acted very creepy and almost like a stalker. So yeah, it wasn't really an ideal storyline for Kurt Angle, this Olympic gold medalist, to be a sexual predator-like character. So the less said about this feud, the better. And not much else to note about this pay-per-view. Carlito versus Big Show. The most memorable thing about this was the storyline leading up to it. Big Show eating Carlito's apple and getting food poisoning or whatever. That was more entertaining than the match itself. Next up, oh by the way, I'm skipping over One Night Stand since I consider it to be an ECW WWE pay-per-view and more of an A pay-per-view. I would consider One Night Stand to be a B pay-per-view. But if you want my thoughts on it, it's an amazing show from start to finish. Check it out if you've never seen it. Anyways, let's move on here to Vengeance. This was a great show, and it really was impressive because WWE had to follow up One Night Stand. And this was about as close to the level One Night Stand that you could possibly ask for. I mean, the 3 top matches were all excellent. You had Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle, the rematch from WrestleMania 21. Not quite as epic as WrestleMania 21, but still an amazing match. One of the better WWE matches during that period. Just awesome stuff from these guys. John Cena versus Chris Jericho versus Christian, triple threat match. This was really when Christian was peaking as a heel character, but WWE no longer pushed him after this pay-per-view, and he would eventually leave and go to TNA. This was a lot of fun. I mean, for triple threat matches, this was definitely one of the better triple threats of this period as well. And then the main event, you had Batista versus Triple H, Hell in a Cell. This was awesome. This was one of my all-time favorite Hell in a Cell matches. They didn't have to do any of the crazy bumps off the cage. Just a violent back and forth showdown between these two gladiators. Lots of blood, lots of violence. I absolutely love the finish with Batista getting Triple H up for the Batista bomb. Triple H grabs the sledgehammer, and it looks like Triple H is going to hit him with it, but he's unable to do so. Batista hits the Batista bomb and gets the win. Brilliant finish. One of my all-time favorite finishes in WWE history, period. I thought it was just so well done. It's just perfect. Excellent match. Absolutely worth checking out if you haven't seen it. And you had Kane versus Edge. The fans were more interested in Matt Hardy than they were in Kane. This was when Matt Hardy had been fired and the fans were chanting, "We want Matt." So yeah, just based off of the top 3 matches, this is a must-see show. I mean, this was one of the best WWE pay-per-views from any era in WWE, and you definitely have to check it out. Vengeance is awesome. Great American Bash, not quite as awesome. For the second straight year, Great American Bash was perhaps the worst WWE pay-per-view of the year, certainly one of the weaker ones. Main event, JBL versus Batista. Not nearly as good as JBL versus John Cena. And what made it even worse is they did a lame-ass DQ finish in the main event on a pay-per-view that people were spending $40, $45, whatever it was at the time. Just, I hate it when they end pay-per-views, especially back in the day when they would end a pay-per-view with a DQ. It felt so cheap because you're spending a lot of money for the pay-per-view and you want a decisive finish. So I was never a fan of when WWE did this, and it's just lame. The rest of the card, I mean, Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero was good. Usual good stuff from them. Undertaker versus Muhammad Hassan, which was the end of the Muhammad Hassan character. There was all the controversy leading up to the pay-per-view where right at the same time they were doing this angle where these Muhammad Hassan sympathizers beat up the Undertaker. They're all dressed in black wearing masks. The same time this was happening, you had the London bombings, and UPN got a ton of heat for airing the segment. I believe it was edited down for SmackDown, and then the decision was made to drop the Muhammad Hassan character. When it had so much momentum, it felt like Muhammad Hassan could have been WWE champion. I mean, he was really gaining a lot of momentum as a heel, and all of a sudden, because of the controversy, they had to drop the character, or at least WWE felt they had to drop it because UPN did not want the character on television. Undertaker just dominated Hassan, beat up all the sympathizers, beat up Daivari, and then at the end, after he won the match, Undertaker would give Muhammad Hassan the last ride off the stage onto the concrete floor. And this was pretty disturbing because it was played off like Muhammad Hassan was killed. They cut to footage of him lying on the ground, and he literally had blood pouring out of his head, and we never saw Muhammad Hassan again. So it was like Undertaker killed him. 2 years in a row, Undertaker essentially killed a character on pay-per-view. So yeah, well, it was very sad. Made me really sad to watch this when I think of the potential Muhammad Hassan could have had as a heel world champion in WWE. Next up, we have Unforgiven. I thought this was a decent show. Another average pay-per-view. Kurt Angle versus John Cena. Once again, they ended in a DQ, so that was lame. Crowd, you could tell, was starting to turn on John Cena. Maybe it was just because the crowd loved Angle so much. I mean, at SummerSlam, when it was Cena versus Jericho, you had the crowd chanting for both guys. And here, it did feel like the crowd was chanting for both guys. But you could sense that the fans were starting, especially the male fans, were starting to get a little bit tired of John Cena. Looking at the rest of this card, Ric Flair winning the IC title from Carlito. This was a fun match, and one noteworthy thing about it is that Ric Flair, I believe for the first time in his career, I could be wrong, but they made a big deal out of it that he actually was able to successfully do a move off of the top rope instead of the guy catching him and throwing him off the turnbuckle. So this was funny. And the backstage segment with Ric Flair celebrating his IC title win. I felt it really helped elevate the IC title again by having Flair win it, and he put it over on the mic saying it was just as important as his world title wins. And then he goes backstage with the women in the limousine. He has the Viagra with him. This was really entertaining. I mean, this was the Ric Flair show. Great stuff. Everything else on the show was just... Some of these matches felt like they belonged on Raw, like Shelton Benjamin versus Kerwin White and Big Show versus Snitsky. One really good match, though, I want to mention is Matt Hardy versus Edge, and this was a nice redemption for WWE because they really dropped the ball in my opinion on the Matt Hardy comeback when he returned on Raw, attacked Edge, and it came off like a shoot, and then at SummerSlam, Edge just beat him. He just beat the crap out of Matt Hardy, and it made Matt Hardy look like a joke. So this was a little bit of redemption. Matt Hardy getting a big win here over Edge, although he ended up losing the feud to Edge anyways. But at least for this time, this one match, Matt Hardy looked like a major superstar. And this was a really good match. All right, moving on here to No Mercy. Unfortunately, this would be Eddie Guerrero's final pay-per-view appearance in WWE. He challenged Batista for the world title. The storyline of this match was that Eddie Guerrero wanted to be friends with Batista, and he was tempted to cheat during this match, but he didn't want to go down that route. He was a new and improved Eddie Guerrero. So yeah, the idea in the storyline was that Eddie Guerrero had the opportunity to win the title if he went back to his old lying, cheating, and stealing ways, but he decided to play it fair, and in the end, Batista won. Eddie Guerrero shook his hand and left, and who knows where WWE would have gone with this storyline. There was a speculation he was going to turn on Batista again, but it was nice that at least Eddie Guerrero did do the right thing, and since this was his last pay-per-view match, his character, turned good guy before he passed away. So that was a nice touch at least. You had a casket match, Randy Orton and his dad, Cowboy Bob Orton, against The Undertaker. Good match. Everything else on this show, to me, was forgettable. You had Mr. Kennedy in his first pay-per-view match against Hardcore Holly. Bobby Lashley in his first pay-per-view match against Simon Dean. Funny segment here. Bobby Lashley beat Simon Dean, and the stipulation was if Bobby Lashley won, Simon Dean would have to eat 20 double hamburgers, double cheeseburgers, whatever they were. And backstage, you had, throughout the show, clips of Simon Dean being forced to eat the burgers. And Bobby Lashley was just funny. Even if it was unintentional, the whole segment was funny. So I enjoyed that. Everything else. Oh, and I also want to mention, Animal and Heidenreich as the new LOD winning the tag team titles from Eminem. Only noteworthy because of the reunion, somewhat, of the Legion of Doom. All right, next up is Taboo Tuesday. The main event, John Cena versus Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle. Shawn Michaels had won the fan voting. I thought that this was an entertaining match, mostly because of Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels being in the mix. It was interesting to note that the fans were slowly starting to turn on John Cena, and he got a lot of boos in this match. Not overwhelmingly, but it was noticeable, and I think perhaps it was still due to the fact that the crowd just loved Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels so much, but you could tell the male fans were starting to have enough of John Cena. So that was interesting. The IC title match, Ric Flair versus Triple H in a steel cage. A really good old school style steel cage match with lots of blood. And what was interesting to me was that Ric Flair not only retained the title, but Triple H put him over cleanly and decisively. And yes, Triple H did eventually win the feud, but I thought it was a nice gesture by Triple H to put over Ric Flair and help not only elevate Flair at his age, but also elevate the IC title. I thought that this was really well done. Really solid stuff. Some of these other matches, though, they felt like they should have been on Raw instead of a pay-per-view. A lingerie battle royal, Batista versus the Coach and Vader and Goldust. Mankind versus Carlito, which wasn't even anything special. Felt like a waste of a Mankind appearance. Eugene teaming up with Jimmy Snuka. And then you had the other legends, Kamala and Hacksaw Jim Duggan, interfering. Kind of felt like a Legends show in some ways. So yeah, not really a very solid card, but I would definitely recommend checking out the WWE title match and the IC title match. And next up we have Armageddon. Another subpar pay-per-view in my opinion, with the exception of the main event, Undertaker versus Randy Orton. I thought that this was good, but not quite at the level of Batista and Triple H from earlier in the year. You had Bob Orton out there interfering. Lots of blood. I think everybody bladed, and I guess there was some controversy with Bob Orton bleeding and having hepatitis, and he didn't disclose it, something like that. And he ended up getting let go from the company as a result. That was really the biggest story coming out of this match. But it was very solid. Not the best, but better than average Hell in the Cell match. Tag team champions versus the world champions, the world tag team champions. The two different tag team champions going head to head. Kane and the Big Show from Raw, the Raw champions against the SmackDown champions Rey Mysterio and Batista. Decent match, but nothing special. Everything else I thought was just average. I mean, nothing that noteworthy about this pay-per-view. Even the Chris Benoit versus Booker T match for the U.S. title, part of the Best of 7 series, I thought it was good, but wasn't like it was their best match that they ever had against each other. And last pay-per-view I'll be talking about here today, New Year's Revolution. Absolutely recommend checking out this show just for the main event. The Elimination Chamber match is historic. The undercard was quite poor in my opinion. I mean, Shelton Benjamin versus Viscera. This was when Shelton Benjamin had his mama in his corner in the storyline, which was beyond lame. Just really did no favors for Shelton Benjamin and his character, basically making him a mom. Triple H versus the Big Show. How do you make a Big Show match even slower paced? You put a cast on Big Show and have him sell an arm injury. Jerry Lawler versus Gregory Helms. I mean, come on now. And Ric Flair versus Edge was the opener, which was good. I mean, I enjoyed the opener. I just enjoyed Ric Flair in general against Edge. I liked the storyline they did with Edge mocking Ric Flair and the DUI and all that stuff. But yeah, like I said earlier, the main event really stole the show. John Cena against Michaels, Kane, Carlito, Angle, and Masters in the Elimination Chamber match. The storyline was that Carlito and Chris Masters were forming this pact to eliminate everybody else, and then it would be down to the two of them for the title. I like the storyline with this match. What's really noteworthy here is that I think that this is the first pay-per-view where the fans were overwhelmingly booing John Cena. I mean, it was heavy. And I might be wrong here, but I think this was the first pay-per-view where the crowd chanted, "Let's go Cena, Cena sucks." I mean, that's what it sounded like to me watching back on this. There was one point in the match towards the end where it sounded like they were doing that dual chant, which has become commonplace in John Cena matches now. So yeah, the crowd, the male fans in particular, were sick of Cena definitely by this time. And they booed every time John Cena got any kind of offense. They were booing him. And in the end, John Cena did overcome the odds, as he would go on to do for many years, of course. Chris Masters got double-crossed by Carlito, and then Cena rolled up Carlito and got the win. But then the cage raised. Vince McMahon came out and said, "This show's not over yet." Edge is cashing in his Money in the Bank contract. Crowd goes nuts. Edge comes out. He hits 2 spears on John Cena and wins the title, and the crowd is just beyond thrilled. And I had watched this pay-per-view in a sports bar, and the whole place just erupted when Edge won the title. One of the all-time historic WWE moments, the first Money in the Bank cash-in, and Edge winning his first world title, and you could tell how much it meant to him. I mean, he was on the verge of tears out there. He was so happy to win the title. It wasn't putting an act on. He was really passionate and happy to finally be on top in WWE. Just a great moment to end that show, and You definitely got to check it out if you haven't seen it, which I'm sure most of you have, but it's worth checking out again and again and again. So that'll wrap it up for my thoughts on the B pay-per-views from Backlash 2005 through New Year's Revolution 2006. Leave a comment. Let me know which matches you enjoyed, which segments you enjoyed, which matches and segments you did not enjoy. And stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest in the world of wrestling. Thanks for watching.